Good morning and welcome to NFTs Live. I'm your host, Tyler D. It is Friday, November 19th. It has been a crazy week for me personally. Both of my kids have been homesick from school all week. It's why I canceled Monday's show. But it's been a crazy week in the NFT markets as well, and we just had to do a show. I'm joined this morning by my main man, Sky Hook. Sky, how you doing?
Doing well. It's nice to see this little bull market, man. It is. It's good to see from the last month we had to get this life injected back into us. Those, nights when you wake up in the morning, you're ready to check everything again. Those floors keep pumping. You're getting the emails again. It's a good time to be alive.
It's been a fun week, seeing green back on the board, getting the emails. I've been hyped. Well, that's a good segue to what we're going to cover today. So our top news, we're going to hit three stories. First, is the bull market back? Then we're going to talk a new blue chip NFT index called Index Co-op. And then we're going to talk Constitution DAO and what an electric roller coaster that was last night. Then we're going to go around the horn on our market segments. We're going to look at the market update from Lucky Traders board. We're going to hit one-of-ones. We're going to do blue chip PFPs in our blocks. And then for the second half of the show, we've got Logan Hitchcock from Lucky Trader, who's going to be joining us for an interview. We're going to talk his background in NFTs, standing up their site, and his thoughts on the current state of the NFT market. So we've got a great show. Let's jump in. So top story of the week is the NFT bull market back. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. Let's take a look at some of the macro view here on the Dune Analytics dashboard for OpenSea. So if we look at the last 5 or 6 days here, it's pretty obvious that we saw a big spike in volume. So it started last Friday. We eclipsed that 100 million per day mark. And then you can see Saturday went up, Sunday stayed even. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we saw some increasing volume before it started dying down a little bit yesterday and then into today. So about 100% increase in volume there from where we were at. It was the highest volume we've seen since the Mechaverse days of early October, and really before then, back into August Mania. So if you think about what has actually been driving this, let's take just a high-level view at the weekly board here. I've got the Lucky Trader site up now, and I'm not going to go into each of these individually, but top of the board, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Mutant Ape Yacht Club, 43,000 ETH traded in the last 7 days. Just insane volume. We see it's up 360% volume-wise BAYC, 500% increase in MAYC. I've got my thoughts on kind of how this spike played out. Sky, I want to hear from you. What was your reaction? What are your thoughts on what we saw here this week?
I was pretty genuinely surprised from the run we've had. I have positioned myself, and I think we've had these conversations on past shows where I'm not crypto native, but from the way things were lining up in the market, before getting into NFTs, it seemed that those that are bullish on crypto and ETH, that we're going to see 5K, we're going to see people talking 10K, 100K Bitcoin. Q4 is when, crypto tends to rise. So if that is happening, we normally see the negative correlation to NFTs dripping like we did in October. I didn't really think about the short view of if ETH stabilizes at a price, do we get to see this mini bull run? Is it kind of like that trap we had in October? But since we've now seen 4,100 to 4,300 ETH for a week straight, it's gotten to a point that people are ready to spend the money. That is the biggest thing to me that I love. Even if I didn't position myself greatly, while that bear market was happening, it is good to see that thirst is still out there and people are ready to spend this dollars on the NFTs.
It was good to see. I think my take on what happened was, I actually think ETH price aside, gas prices aside, I think the big news in the BAYC world with Kingship, with the late night talk show, Jimmy Fallon, him changing his PFP, and then on Friday, some influencers got in. It started off this wave of buying, and then as we've seen in the NFT ecosystem, sellers don't stock their ETH away. I think everyone who sold during that big run rotated the funds back into some of the lower entry point projects on the board, which is what kind of propelled the market. And then dropping ETH, somewhat lower gas, helped sustain it for the course of the week. Am I ready to call bull market? Absolutely not. And I will say I'm still very concerned. I want to see how the next week plays out. I'm concerned that headed into Thanksgiving, people are going to go spend time with their families. Some of the action is going to dry up a little bit. And then we're going to see undercutting, because as we've seen, what goes up really fast can come down really fast as well.
Yep. And I think that's the larger point is if you hit it right. I think it was ignited by some of those BAYC moves, the trickle down effect that ends up happening from those, and then the sustained low ETH, like it just all compiled on itself. But those that were smart enough to be calling the bottom of when we saw the uptick, I just didn't know when that bottom was going to be, so I was afraid to spend a good amount to get into some of those projects. But those that did, they were able to flip into this run, or are they holding? That's the key question.
Yeah. But it was a fun week. Let's talk our second news story and what could be another trigger for a longer term bull run. So I'm going to pull up this thread. It's from Crypto Texan. It's all about this new NFT blue chip index called Index Co-op. So we'll walk through the thread here. Essentially, they're going to have a coin or a token. It's called JPEG. We see it right here. Here's a little bit of info on the drop. It's a market cap weighted portfolio of blue chip NFT collections, allowing folks to get diversified liquid exposure to top NFTs. As we continue scrolling through, the collections that they're selecting for the index are essentially based on the top floor cap. So essentially the floor price multiplied by the volume in the collection. I think what's also interesting, if we continue to scroll down, is this is all based on liquidity vaults. So NFTX, Nifty Museum, will be what this index is tied to. It won't be tied to any individual NFTs or anything like that. They said a little bit about their criteria. So the floor cap has to be at least 50 million, and they're doing art only. I think PFP is considered in this art, no land, audio, or domain names. So that was interesting to see. And then if we scroll down, they did a little bit of a hint at what's going to be in the index. So Punks, BAYC, Squiggles, Cool Cats, Meebits, Toads, Ducks, World of Women, BAKC, Kongs, Pudgies, Mooncats, Hashmass. Hashmass was a surprise. This was really interesting to see. They said here, it's a caveated, this is not a finalized list of the projects that are going to be included. But we've already seen, the Coinbase platform and that announcement. And then when products get announced that they're going to be on Coinbase, we see a mini Coinbase pump. We saw it last week with Mechas and On One. I think the Index Co-op could be the next big pump, right? If your collection is going to be certified and included within this index fund, that's going to be a big trigger. I think this is also a really nice new entry point for newbies or folks who aren't comfortable, going out and buying individual NFTs. This is a way for them to buy a token to get exposure to the markets, especially for those who are a little bit more crypto native or are used to trading coins, but still are a little bit intimidated in buying individual NFTs. This is now a very viable option. So I'm really interested to follow this one, see where it goes and what impact it has on the market. But I'm very optimistic here. All right, let's keep going. I want to get to our third story. Arguably the headline of the week, definitely part of the most exciting aspects of this week. Constitution DAO, we're showing their Twitter page. It's got the Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We're all going to buy the Constitution. And that's really what it felt like this week. I want to get Sky's reaction to what happened last night. But just for viewers who aren't familiar with this, essentially this is a group that formed on the internet with the idea of they wanted to buy the Constitution. One of 13 copies of the Constitution was on sale at Sotheby's auction last night. So they went about a DAO fundraise. It started slowly. It was like 3 million on Monday, and then it caught wildfire, 20 million. They ended up with 45 million or so in the pot leading up to the auction. And the idea was they were going to bid live in the Sotheby's auction and try to buy the Constitution. Sky, I know you were watching last night. Describe the atmosphere from your perspective.
The YouTube chat was unbelievable. I was dying, full of GMs, full of rug, full of devs do something, just classic NFT Discord spam. But it was really neat to see the, kind of NFT cult following of what Twitter can be at times, all rooting us on, having no idea, was it Brooke? Was it David? That they were not in the running after the $30 million increase right away. Maybe our guest Logan could have pitched in a little bit more to get them over the line, because I know he was a part of it. But no, it was fun, man. It was just something to see that in real life DAO atmosphere chase after something. They probably could have done better of not publicizing how much they had, because I really do think that made an impact of what that final number was. Because even though they raised 42 or 45 million, obviously there's fees and stuff associated. So I think that 30 mil eliminated Constitution DAO to get out of there. But I am the proud owner of BrookeLampley.eth. If any of those, people that were watching last night want to get on Brooke, she was dynamite in there, just a killer at the buzzer every single time with a bid. So if anyone wants that off my hands, I'm interested in the further 12 editions of the Constitution.
Epic buy, and Brooke definitely a winner last night. Well, for those who didn't watch, I want to walk through this a little bit. So I actually didn't have plans to join the live stream, and then folks in our Discord were talking about how fun it was to watch some of the prior auctions. So I said, okay, I'll tune in. Started watching the chat. The chat was absolutely electric. Every one of the primary acronyms from NFT Twitter just rapid fire, hundreds per second per minute coming through. Then we got into the auction. The auction was super fast paced and fun to watch. I mean, how long did it end up lasting? What, maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah, it was quick. That guy was auctioneer was good.
Yeah, it was super fun to watch. We didn't really know who we were rooting for. We didn't know if it was Brooke. I'm forgetting the other gentleman's name.
I think it was David, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was that confusion. And then right afterwards, we didn't know if Constitution DAO won or not. So you posted a chat that they were priced out at 32 million, but then there was a Twitter Spaces that I joined. There was over 5,500 people in this Twitter Spaces. It started out as a celebration saying we won the Constitution. And apparently there was some confusion even up at the top of this DAO where they thought they had potentially won. And then about 10 minutes into the Spaces, the news trickled out that no, they didn't win, which was, a little bit of disappointment, but I think it was still, everyone left with a very positive feeling on the night, and how DAOs can make such an impact, and how, setting us up for really the year of the DAO, which a lot of people are already calling 2022 year of the DAO. It was a really fun night, and really interested to see really what happens with Constitution DAO going forward, what they're going to do with the funds, because we know a lot of people are probably going to leave the money in there. And then what other purposes, DAOs can come together for in the future. All right, well, that's our top news. Let's get into our market update. We're going to take a look at the Lucky Trader board here today. We're going to take a look at the weekly view. We've covered some of this here in our macro recap, but hitting some of the high notes, Bored Ape Yacht Club started the week at 32 floor, up to 52, 20 ETH jump. Just incredible. Mutant Apes, arguably a bigger winner. Their floor up 76%. It was somewhere around 3.8, I want to say, ahead of this run, now sitting at 6.8. Those two heads and shoulders really above the rest of the market with respect to volume and floor price increase. Punks third. They held steady on the week. If you got in the Punks Discord, it was a lot of saltiness this week, a lot of coping with BAYC. There's a lot of chatter of BAYC flipping Punks. So it was an interesting week for them, but ultimately a green week, therefore up a bit at 90. But while we had to say that the BAYC ecosystem was the winner of the week, if there's a second winner, it's Doodles. So Sky, I know you've been following the Doodles market pretty closely. Maybe walk us through kind of your thoughts and how this week played out.
People love the Doodles. I love the Doodles, not as much as I did when I held them. Unfortunately, I no longer have any in my wallet, as didn't see this run happening. We have seen them go from as low as 0.9, 0.8-ish floor was what it was just about 10 days ago, to touching 4 2 nights ago. They're the perfect like PFP, like easiness of it. Obviously not any type of, well, some of the top ones are animals, but just kind of one. I even saw people like, this is like a perfect like LinkedIn version if you wanted to like kind of integrate into that. I think it's pretty cool, but just, Burnt Toast obviously has some popularity, just a good team around it. And just naturally felt in a bull market, these would be one that would make its level up to toads and cool cats. And that's what people have started to do, and it moved quickly. I think they're settling around 3 ETH right now. Saw an 80 ETH sale for that top 8, which is number 14, I believe, or maybe it was 15, that sold overnight. An alien sale to Top Shot Fund, or Top Shot Cowboy, who is very popular on Twitter. Just saw actually the floor or above floor get swept by, I think it was Go West BTC, just in the last hour, had 20 plus doodle sales. So I think there's just a lot of popularity around these. I think they're incredibly interesting. Is it something I would look to pull back into my portfolio in a bear market? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the lessons that a lot of the sharps are saying in the bear market is see which projects outperform, right? And I think we saw 5 to 7 days just now of what can happen in a bear market, and it really feels like it was the blue chips that drove everything. I had to pay attention when doodles are 4th on the board with 6K ETH, right? There's clearly some market demand, a lot of chatter about a really strong community, a good artist, and people like the art as well. So I included them on my power rankings, which I published earlier this week on my Twitter. Definitely one to watch. I'm not an owner, but certainly one I'll be looking at. A few other highlights on the board. Little Baby Ape Club, they kind of came and went. There was a lot of, there's some allegations of some racist clothing in that collection. I'm not going to pull it up. I don't really want to spend any time on it. Cool Cats had a solid week, up about 37% at about, we're sitting at an 8.5 floor. Bored Ape Kennel Club up to a 3.3 floor. We should have talked about them with BAYC. They're now the lowest cost entry point. They're all over the BAYC roadmap. A lot of folks think the dogs are the next ones to run, and I am not going to fade that bet. The Toads had a decent week, up 20%. Certainly not as what we saw in BAYC or Cool Cats, but a solid week for them as well. And then I think another winner, a newcomer to the board, Smiles SSVRS. So Sky, I think this is another one that you're following a little bit. I'll pull up their page on Lucky Trader. Maybe give us a quick snapshot of your view of them.
Yeah, Smiles had kind of a sweet spot in the bear market of how they rolled out their mint. I think if this was August when these things came out, like it would have had nothing similar to the way it minted out. So they basically had a whitelist, sold about half of their supply on a whitelist, opened up to a public raffle, didn't even fill the public raffle, had to then open up a public mint afterwards. So basically, if you wanted a Smiles, you absolutely could have gotten one, if not two, or more in the pre-mint. So, that was about a 0.16 cost after gas, and it sat there for about a week until it led into a little bit of a reveal, and there just was never a high amount of listed. I think that was maybe one of the signs I should have paid more attention to was, an 888 supply, or 8888, 8,888, and there was only like 180 of them listed 2 or 3 days before reveal. So it was easy to just crank at that floor as we led into reveal. It got as high as almost 0.9 as it got in reveal, and it also had troubles revealing. The artist Wahid Zai is very popular, has worked with Drake, just somebody who creates unique art. You can see these are just totally different than a standard 2D PFP. Has a 3D, has cool graphics to it, and just something that will stand out. So I think that all led up to what we saw was the explosion of when they finally revealed. People liked them. The standard paper handing, flippers get out happened, of course, right away. But now it's settled around that 0.7 floor. Good amount of volume, as we see here on Lucky Trader, and something that, similar to a lower level doodles, has that unique appeal with a good community that when the market is fully pushing, people like the Smiles.
Agreed. I think one point I want to touch on your idea on that metric of volume listed or percent of the collection listed. This isn't a really important metric to watch. Admittedly, it's one that I don't always pay enough attention to. But if you want to think about how floors can run up and run up fast, that volume listed is incredibly important. And we'll actually come back to that when we touch on Asimica later in the show. Let's round this out. The last piece I want to touch on from the board, brain drops, the AI new marketplace. We highlighted them last Friday. They dropped it was Monday, I believe. Claire Silver, Van Arman, and Gene were the three artists. We've seen Claire's floor get all the way above 2 before retracing a bit. I want to say Van Arman sitting around 1 or so with his Podgans. Successful launch, a lot of hype, some momentum building. Excited to watch this one as well. Go check out Brain Drops if you haven't already. All right, that's our market update. Let's switch gears here and get into a few rapid fire segments. I'll touch on One of Wonderland here briefly. So starting, the rare token has had a roller coaster week as well. It got as high as 2.2. It then dipped back into the ones. I think it was sitting around 1.92 or so this morning. So definitely a token to watch. We saw the BAYC Rolling Stone cover sell for 100 ETH. That was the highlight sale of the week. The second highlight sale and a new all-time high for Dan Juezguiz. I don't know how to pronounce his name, unfortunately. But this piece called Leap of Faith, you see the character leaping across the bridge with the cat close behind. Again, the ties to cats. The market loves them. Time for some night parkour with my best friend. So Dan is, I would say, a leading, if not one of the #1 artists in digital cyberpunk art. So cyberpunk is kind of a genre of digital art that it's dystopian, it's sci-fi, it's concrete jungle, years in the future. That's the style. It's very unique. When you take a look at Dan's set of work and his book of work, his pieces are very distinctive. You can pick them out. That's always something I look for in identifying solid one-of-ones. And then the collectors in the set are some of the biggest names as well. Dan sets his new all-time high with the 66 ETH, $276,000 sale to 33 vault to highlight our week in one-of-ones. Other than that, a few notable sales this week. The piece Starman from Ruben Wu sold for 25 ETH. Trevor Jones on the board with an 18 ETH sale. Crypto Geisha with 11, and then Pillar Zeta with a sale for 10. A few others. We'll tweet out some of these in our show notes after the show. Let's go ahead and get into blue chips and art blocks. We've really already touched on most of the blue chip PFPs, so I'm gonna skip over those for now. For viewers who haven't seen this before, this is WGMI.io. This is an easy site just to quickly see floor prices of all the major collections. Let's take a quick run through the board. Fidenza's one of the biggest winners of the week. They got swept up. Floor had creeped into the 70s, back at 122, up 52% on the week. Elevate Deconstructions holding steady in that 50 to 60 range. Ringers on the down tick still here. Red on the week, 12% sitting at 55. Scrolling through here, a few of these held steady. Archetypes held steady at 15. Unigrids up 10% at 11. Subscapes pretty much even at 9.8. Squiggles, one of the big winners of the week here, up 33% and 8.6 ETH floor. We also highlighted them in that index co-op blue chip fund. Could have been a potential driver. A few other highlights. Fermenti up 72%. Biggest increase I saw this week. Then now sitting at a 7.5 floor. Singularity up a bit here at 6.4. And then Phase, actually one of my favorite collections, kind of back from the dead. It was sitting in the twos, up at 4.25, up 70% on the week. But one that I want to touch on that we're not talking about here is the Asimica drop. This was the curated drop from Monday. Sky, I know you were following this a bit. You want to kind of tell us what happened on this drop?
Yeah, so curated, I guess the art blocks market as a whole has just been the Wild West recently. I mean, I think Edifice, which would have been the weeks before curated, was a fake ignite to the art blocks market almost, where we saw people for the first time in a long time make profit immediately after, and profit of more than an ETH. You know, those quickly, you know, the flippers came out, and there seems to be a sentiment around art blocks that those that are passionate collectors are letting the flippers bring those floors down. And Asemica got basically botted, you know, in a sense of one collector, you know, ended up getting a significant amount of the supply. And we know how that can affect a floor price, especially with a smaller collection in art blocks. So, you know, what it ended up minting out at 1.7 or
I was gonna say 2, you know,
yeah, I know it
the
was
very
right in
last
that.
few minutes got
Yeah. But now seeing that floor right around 0.5, you know, that is something that can easily happen when the ownership, you know, unique ownership is not anywhere near there. Now, Edifice, you know, if I focus on the other one, did see a resurgence over the past week after those, you know, kind of paper hands did get out of it. But, you know, when it has a botting situation like this one did, it's a tough road to recovery.
It really is. It makes me feel bad for those who, you know, did mint it because they like the art. They're going to be in for a lot of pain. We saw this with Sculpture. I was super hyped for Sculpture. Found that it got botted. It crushed the market. And how does it crush the market? It's that supply listed. So, tale of two stories. You talked about Smiles SSVRS doing well because low volume listed. I'm looking at Asemica, 490 out of 960 NFTs are listed for sale. It's over 50%. So it's just huge walls of listings to try to get through, and it would take some insane volume. So I think we will be seeing Asemica, unfortunately, near the bottom of the curated rankings for some time. And I actually think there is some chance it becomes the floor project below CryptoBlots. So
can you
we'll
go
see.
back to a Lucky Trader page, just like a main page a sec? Because I think this is something that they do well. If you see that last tab over there, that buy now /10%. So that I'm hoping, and I believe they are working on showing that as like, or if you click actually, also you can change that sort amount by percent. I believe it shows the percent of those that are listed. So just above that, there's that next to 1 hour. If you move your mouse up like a half a little bit there, see where it says amount? Go to percent. So it'll show you how much is available for the buy now, and then how much of that buy now supply is within 10%, or how much of the overall project is listed within 10% of that floor. So, you know, you can see those projects that are just heavily weighted in listings at the floor. It's going to be very difficult for those to move, just like you said. So this is a great feature that they have on their site.
Yeah, awesome find. I'm just now saying this for the first time, so clearly I hadn't played around the site enough, but that's a great metric to use and one I'm going to start using. Well, this is actually a great seg into our interview segment. Before we jump in, Sky, any last comments for today?
No, let's hope we keep staying green. I'm excited to have a happy Thanksgiving to everybody here in America next week. I probably won't see you until after that, but have fun with Logan and enjoy your time, man. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. See you, Sky. All right. Well, now we're going to move into the second part of our show. We are going to have an interview with Logan Hitchcock. A quick introduction for Logan. Logan is the editor-in-chief of Lucky Trader. He has been blogging for years on his own site, loganhitchcock.com, and has been writing about NFTs at least since January of this year. As I picked up on his quest to become jobless, I think he may have accomplished that goal with his role here with Lucky Trader. But I want to hear more from Logan on that. Logan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you shouting out becoming jobless. Man, I do feel in many ways jobless at this point in time. We get to talk about JPEGs. That's pretty cool, right?
It's wild. Is this where you saw yourself going in January when you started writing about NFTs?
Certainly not. Of course, could not. I don't think any of us could have anticipated. Actually, on that, not to plug becoming jobless too much, because I'm not really writing there right now. But in the very beginning of the year, I spent a lot of time thinking about kind of where I fit in terms of early adopters. Right? You've seen that chart before with like early adopters, innovators, right? And like that's how we know how early we are, how late. So I spent a lot of time thinking about where I fall in that, and I don't think I guess I'm in the early adopters queue, right? But I'm not like the very, very beginning person. So I never could have possibly anticipated. I never had the foresight that like this was coming. You know what I mean? And it cost me in many, many ways. But fortunately enough, I was early enough. I think we all are, hopefully, to be along for the ride at present time.
Yeah, you and me both. And so preparing for the interview, I was actually reading through several of your blog posts from your site, and we have very similar intro stories. So I want to chat through some of that. But kind of the first question I always start with my guests on the show is kind of tell us your NFT story, kind of how you got in the mix and how you kind of got exposed and how it's carried you to here.
Yeah, of course. So I actually, unbeknownst to myself, minted my first NFT in 2017. I bought CryptoKitties from Dapper Labs, of course, right? During the bull run in 2017, I was kind of fresh out of college, had a little bit of disposable income, and foolishly thought that, I'd come from the daily fantasy world and sports betting, right? It's all native to me. And I sort of foolishly thought that, oh, well, I can make money doing, CryptoKitties too, right? Did not make money doing CryptoKitties, but that's kind of where I started. And then, of course, set myself up with a MetaMask, all those things in 2017, and then forgot about it. And in the back half of 2020, at this point, I saw a blog post from Fred Wilson, notable venture capitalist at AVC, and about NBA Top Shot and Dapper Labs, and I recognized the name Dapper Labs, and I just kind of read and hopped on the site and bought a few packs and was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. I wasn't even really thinking about it as a money-making thing. And then, of course, 2.5 weeks later, 3 weeks later, the infamous Jonathan Bales article, right, which exposed so many people and helped me develop a little bit more conviction that was like, okay, maybe I should look at this a little bit deeper. And yeah, from there, I just went on a tear of stalking Twitter feeds, stalking. I have not told Jonathan this, but I think I wrote about it. One of the things I was doing in the early days, and part of my life motto is kind of like tail smart people, right? And so one of the things I was doing in the early days is like, I would stalk Jonathan or Peter's Twitter follows and see, okay, who are they following in the NFT world? And this is so early, right? And it seems ridiculous to say, but January is like, I feel ancient. Nevertheless, I would stalk them, and that's how I found Avastars, right, in January, and I found, a couple other things, a couple other projects that maybe I would not have stumbled into. That. So that's really where I started, and then from those Twitter follows, got me to Discords and other projects, and just here I am, 100 rabbit holes later.
Man, that is some next level stalking. I have to.
I'm not proud of it.
You on that. And hey, you front ran that Bales post. I mean, anyone who front ran that post in NBA Top Shot certainly had to have made a little bit of return in those early days.
Yeah, I've been, super fortunate in so many different ways over the course of the last year. I made like a tweet a long time ago, but like, it seems incredibly ridiculous that NFTs, like pictures on the internet, could have changed so many people's lives. But fortunate to fall into that bucket for sure.
Yeah. I totally agree with you there. I'm in, from a Top Shot perspective, slightly different camp. I'm the one who read Bales' post the day it came out, didn't get it. I had a good buddy, Dirty Rush on Twitter, Andy, saying, hey man, you should do this. I waited 4 to 6 weeks, but 4 days before the peak, and then everything drops. But similarly, it kind of got me into the broader world of NFTs. So as I was reading through some of your posts last night, you mentioned, I don't know if these are some of your first art block sale or purchases, but a Ringers and a Nimbus. Maybe the Ringers could be a sore spot. But was that some of your earliest like OpenSea purchases when you got back into it?
Actually, yeah. So this all stems from that maybe awkward, weird stalking that I did. And so I found from Bales and Peter, I found a couple different people to follow. And from there, I found Snowfro, right? Eric, Artblocks founder, creator, OG punk holder. At that point in time, I still to this day, wrestle with the conviction on generative art and Artblocks, but that's kind of moot for this conversation. Just stumbled into it, and I saw some tweets. Believe it or not, in that blog post, there's a tweet from Beanie that kind of highlighted Dmitry Cherniak and like how he was a super notable artist. And so I think, basically I started to put together a thesis of like, hey, notable artist, project that like is coming from a notable platform, right? Because I knew of Snowfro. I was like, this seems like a bet I could make, right? And I'm kind of doing this in conjunction alongside Top Shot and all that other stuff. So yeah, these were in large part my first purchases. At that point in time, did not have a ton of liquidity, and I sunk a lot of it, I think half an ETH into a ringer in January. I don't want to look, to be quite honest, at the date. And yeah, I sold it a week later for 1.5 ETH, so 1 ETH profit, which to me at the time was, and still to so many people, is just an unbelievable amount of money. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I remember like waking up in the middle of the night to get the OpenSea your item sold email, right? I think my first one, you're right, like the first sale I made on OpenSea. And I remember being ecstatic. And then, some time goes by, and then you realize that, oh, I Am DC Investor bought it from me. And then you learn a little bit more about him. You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh man, I might have made some mistakes here. And then you go down the road, and of course, foolish, very, very foolish. But it was a necessary jumping off point for me in terms of liquidity. Artblocks, I had a ringer. I bought a Nimbud on secondary, sold that as well. I minted a few things after Cyber Cities, I think it's called. I minted. I might have minted 1 or 2 other early Artblocks. Dude, I remember looking at Squiggles, and I might be misremembering the price a little bit, but I feel like they were in like the 0.25 range, right? Yeah. Like I remember looking at them, and I just like didn't get it. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was like, there's so many of these, they look exactly the same. Why would I want this? I was totally unable to put together the conviction or the thesis of like, the provenance of like, this is the first Artblocks project, right? I was able to do that with punks, believe it or not. So I'm not sure why I couldn't use like a transitive property to throw that to Artblocks, but I didn't for some reason.
Your story is so interesting to me because we were absolutely doing very similar things at the very same time. So my intro to OpenSea NFTs really was through Euler Beats. And a few buddies. I actually checked in that CSU and Bales, I think, had also made some purchases. Cuban was touting it, had instant conviction. Long story short, lost 75% on that trade. But it got me to follow I Am DC Investor, Beanie Maxi. Actually, following them got me into my first Artblocks purchase, which was Nimbuds. Yes. I bought temporary top. I paid 2.5 ETH at the time. They went to 0.5 and sat there for so long before the August mania hit, and that did eventually move that profitably. Artblocks is an interesting one, and we could spend the whole conversation on that. The algorithms and the math meets art piece really resonated with me. I then I bought some Squiggles, bought a few other things, and have since been pretty plugged in on it, but we'll save that for maybe later in the conversation. I want to hear now a little bit more from your early days NFTs to getting into Lucky Trader. So I guess how'd you get connected with either CSU or Bales, or what was your intro point?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I come from like the daily fantasy world as well, right? That's kind of what I was envisioning myself doing, you know what I mean, as a college student, writing for Daily Roto, Drew Dinkmeyer and Mike Leone. And if you come from those streets, of course, Bales, Peter are gods, in that world, and they very much so were the same to me for such a long time. I was fortunate enough, though, as a result of being connected to some other notable industry participants like Drew and Mike. I was just fortunate to know some people that allowed me to develop a solid reputation alongside other solid reputation people. And I think, more or less, Bales sent that tweet in like June or something about looking for someone to do editor-in-chief content at Lucky Trader, and I kind of just threw my hat in the ring and got lucky. I don't know how else to really phrase it. A confluence of things, right? Like, it had some people that could vouch for me, that are high reputation individuals. I had work that I had written, right? Like, I'd put myself out there. So a little bit of it was certainly my own work, but very much so just being in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's anything you would point to. Was it your body of written work? Was it your reputation that you built up, or do you think it's just a kind of a combination of those?
Hopefully a combination of the two. Yeah, of course. Like, because I'm not. There could have been plenty of other hires that would have brought more of an audience. Like, I have like 1,700 Twitter followers or something, right? Something like that. So hopefully it's a combination of the valuable work and the reputation, right? Because those things are not necessarily super easy to come by in joint. So hopefully you'd have to ask those guys though, for sure.
Well, I want to hear now, kind of your side of getting the site stood up. So we'll go ahead and just pull up the homepage, luckytrader.com. I will just say, certainly personally, I've been very impressed with how much you have all put out. Of course, starting with the initial product with the rarity rankings and whatnot. But I think the piece that's resonated with me the most is some of the educational content that you all have been actively striving to put out to help onboard folks. I think a lot of people in the NFT Twitter space will give lip service to that, but I haven't seen a whole lot of action to it. And that's certainly something I've seen from your site. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the evolution and kind of what went into getting this stood up.
Yeah. So I joined in August, mid-August. So it's only been about 3 months, believe it or not, since I have started here at Lucky Trader. Of course, the developers and product builders started long before that. And of course, that manifests itself in the tools and resources that you're using on the site, which you guys shared in the beginning of the show. So kudos to them for working on it for a very long time and producing a really, really solid, hopefully, I know, of course, I'm biased, but a very, very solid product and aesthetically pleasing product as well. As for the, the education and kind of onboarding and starting this whole journey and how to get it stood up, so a lot of work. And I think realistically, it has been as a result of kind of shifting our lens to create a paradigm and a place for folks that is solely focused, or maybe not solely focused, but at least heavily focused on education and on onboarding, right? That was a key theme for us. And so, as you mentioned, it is a place in an industry where when people are seeking out content, they're seeking out, point me to what to buy, right? They're seeking out, point me to where I need to be, looking or whatever. They basically want you to make it as easy as possible to purchase something. And we're taking sort of a longer term approach here, which is, let's provide the tools and resources for folks to make good investment decisions, to participate in good projects, to practice security and all those things. But we're not going to point you to each project. We're not going to point you to, and we're not going to pump and dump stuff on you. And so it's a core focus for us. As you mentioned, on the site right now, there's plenty of education for folks that if you've never even held a ETH or a MetaMask or anything like that, those resources are available for you on the site, in the articles and the tutorial section for you to get access to. It's a key theme. Of course, we're brand new as well, right? So there is so much work to do. A lot of things that we definitely want to be able to provide for folks. The other thing I would mention is, you guys are in the streets, or whatever you want to call that, right? So if there are things that you want and need that you feel are gaps, like, I think we're hopefully very receptive to the feedback and want to build this in a way that is, right there with the Web3, theme, which is we want to align incentives of our users alongside us as well, right? If we're making it beneficial for you, if you're improving your experience in Web3 and your bags, whatever, hopefully it's beneficial for us as well. So would love to hear that feedback and happy to help try to shape the content on site to fit those needs. But realistically, yeah, I mean, it's just a core focus and a lens in which we're viewing what we're providing. Like, we want to provide objective analysis, objective feedback, timely news and analysis for folks so that they can understand and cut through the noise, because there's a lot of noise out there.
I love it. Love to hear it. Love to see that you're receptive to feedback. Just one off the top of my head, and I've been screaming this from the rooftops. I was on phone calls with the IC Tools folks several times on our show. Marketplace aggregators, I think, are going to become increasingly important, right? Especially as we see more and more of these start to spin up with sushi and shoyu. I've yet to see, super rare foundation information tied into these sites. Other blockchains like Solana and others. So I think that is going to be increasingly important as we get deeper and into a more mature market in the future.
Yeah. So as far as I can comment there, those things are obviously all at the top of our mind as well. Right. So for example, you mentioned Solana. We are, actively working on like an intro piece for folks that don't even know what Solana is, right? Alternative layer one blockchain for use, and actually a really good one for folks that maybe don't have a big bankroll to start collecting, despite the NFT collections there maybe being, not maybe your best place to really put your cash. But anyway, that's an aside, not financial advice, right? I think we definitely want to provide for all of those things. And over time, hopefully Lucky Trader is a home for each and every piece, so that being the art on Foundation, Super Rare, and beyond, that being Solana, that being Tezos and Flow, right? All of those things. It's a matter of realistically prioritizing appropriately, and then also to, protecting consumers in a way that we are focusing on providing legitimate projects and legitimate blockchains and areas where those new people who we definitely want to be able to provide for, right? Those new people are put in a position to succeed. And so right now, where the bulk of activity is happening is of course on Ethereum, and that's where, our support lies. But we are actively thinking about, and hopefully very soon, supporting other things as well.
That's awesome to hear. I was going to ask if there's anything else you can share from a roadmap perspective, or kind of where do you see the site going, or is that still a little hush hush?
Yeah, so I'll share as best I can, and somebody can yell at me later if I wasn't supposed to, of course, share it. But anyway, like some of the key things that you've shown now here on the page are like the prerequisites, in my opinion, right? So like market data, market information, rarity stuff. People definitely want those things, and it's really, really important. But what we've tried to do is think about the process of buying an NFT or selling an NFT or bidding on an NFT, right? And find ways to improve that experience for folks, right? Where other sites can't. And so that's where you've seen like bid mode on the site, right? And that's where you've seen the OpenSea extension, which allows you to see rarities right on the page, or mass list or mass bid on NFTs. And so, not to give too much away, but I think that theme, right, of making it easier for folks is definitely something key to what we're thinking about long term. And there are a whole host of those other things that maybe you're thinking about as prerequisites, right? Like alerting when a floor price hits a certain thing, right? Like I don't know how common that is now. I'm sure some tools have it, some don't, but we want to be able to provide all of it in some way or another. And that's a super ambitious thing to do. But I am wholly confident in the team here and the dev resources that we have to build something super, super valuable for each and every potential participant, whether you be new and or a very, very experienced, active trader and investor. So things like alerts, things like continued building out of the My Wallet, right? So you can now connect your wallet on site. As of right now, it's kind of like we're setting the foundation to build on top of that. So you can filter through and see what's in your wallet when you're on a particular collection. You can see what's in other people's wallets, pretty easily on the site as well. But, everybody wants the my portfolio estimation or my portfolio view and things like that. And all I can say there is I think in some way, those things will all be enabled, right, for folks. As for how it necessarily manifests itself, I think that's still maybe details I couldn't share and or we're still thinking about. But more or less, if it's a part of your flow, if it's a part of your experience in buying or thinking about buying or preparing to buy or sell an NFT, I think we want to have a resource, whether that be through an actual tool or through content to help you do so, available at Lucky Trader.
It's important. And I think one piece that I'm going to touch on from what you said is just trying to make the process easier. From my perspective, I think part of the reason why NFTs haven't blown up more is the barrier to entry, right? There are a lot of things to do, a lot of steps to complete to even be able to purchase an NFT right now. And it's overwhelming and it's scary, right? Especially for folks who aren't super crypto native.
Yep.
And a lot of influencers out there, may just be hyping projects or tokens or whatnot, but it's definitely refreshing to see a site and a brand, focused on educational content and tools to try to enhance that experience.
Yeah, and like I said, if you see gaps there, sorry, I'm stumbling over words. Not enough espressos this morning yet, only through 2. But if you see gaps in terms of content, yourselves or viewers, right, that you're looking for clear answers to, let us know. Because ultimately we want to be able to make it easier for folks. And it is intimidating. And that's why people don't even try, right? And if it's difficult for them to find the resources to make it easier, then they're not gonna try. So that's what we want to do. We want to make it super easy, not only to do the things, but also to find the resources to do the things. A lot of to-dos there.
Well, I love it. And first, no apologies necessary. I realized you did a live show last night. You did a show right before this one. So, we're just happy to have you. With 7 to 10 minutes left in our conversation, maybe we shift gears from Lucky Trader, maybe take a step back, and I'd love just to hear your thoughts on the overall market. I know, we started the show here today with talking about, bull market ? What's your take on the kind of the current state of affairs?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been actively talking about it a little bit as well. I think cyclically, just how quickly things move, it's very difficult to probably label any market as bull or bear, because I don't know the timeframes that we should be assessing to these particular things, right? I would say though, if we were to characterize just at a weekly level, then I think we've regained mini bull market, right? You guys are talking about Constitution DAO. I'm like really thinking and hoping that something like this is super interesting to folks that may have never, like I've had some friends in the last few days that like don't own NFTs, right? Like text me about Constitution DAO and they're like, what the hell is this thing, right? And start to like show them Web3, right? And sort of some of the weird things that are happening, weird but fun things that are happening. And I could see this definitely being a catalyst for more people entering Coinbase NFT. You talk about friction removing, right? So I definitely do think we're in sort of a little bit of a mini bull. I think there are some things that could be catalysts to continuance of that mini bull, like the Constitution DAO thing, like Coinbase NFT. I am personally a little concerned about end of year stuff as we approach, and I don't like to say the T word, but like as we approach people needing to potentially think about taxes. And so I do think mini bull. I am a little worried about what happens as we approach end of December.
Yeah, I think our views align. I had the same concerns. I think, of course, the Ethereum price is a component of all this. If we see some big surges, that's going to have some impacts here. But what's the world of NFTs? We're always just like 1 or 2 big trigger events away, right, from massive surges. We saw what happened just with a few news articles and a few trigger events with BAYC last weekend. I actually hadn't fully processed Constitution DAO becoming a trigger point, but I think it's a really interesting idea. And I forget the metric, but something like 20% of Constitution DAO, it was their first crypto buy or something along those lines. It was
really
substantially greater than 0. I was very surprised.
I had not seen that. I saw the average, the median donation was $206, which is like, that's a super cool positive thing. You see that with like political things, right? Where it's like, we raised, everybody was at $5, which is like a sense of like, how many people, right? As if you can raise a ton of money, but the average or the median is very, very small, it's a good thing. I'm excited about it. I think it's cool. I think it's a really cool storyline. And I'm hopeful that it gets people intrigued more than anything. That's what we need. We need more. We don't need more people to stalk weird Twitter follows like I did. You know what I mean? But we need more people to come in and like take a look at it. And it's good for everyone, right?
Yeah, I think it really plays well kind of across the bell curve, right? Like the 60 IQ side, right? It was super fun. It was electric, right? Constitution DAO everywhere. Always Sunny in Philadelphia ties on their Twitter page. And then on the 160, it's wow. In 3 days, random people on the internet came together and raised $40 million for a fund. What are the other use cases for this? And I'm excited about some of like the positive society impacts beyond just buying artifacts and NFTs.
Yep.
Like, what if we identify a group of researchers who have an idea for how to cure the next wave of cancer and just need funding, right? Ability to crowdsource and fund those via a DAO is super exciting. And I think definitely agree with your point that it caught a lot of folks' attention here. Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see where DAOs come next. I think it's going to be one of the biggest storylines.
Yeah, I heard you mention year of the DAO 2022. If I can spin the wheels on you as host here, are you actively participating in any DAOs?
Great question.
If you can answer.
No, the simple answer is no. I've thought quite a bit about forming DAOs, potentially trying to do my own one through our Discord group. It hasn't really gotten off the ground yet. But I will say Constitution DAO got me super hyped last night.
Yeah.
I didn't participate and I had so much FOMO during the auction. So the next idea or pursuit for Constitution DAO I'll be looking at hard. I've been close several times. Like Grailer's DAO is one that came out just this past week to buy Incomplete Control and a few others. Thought about participating. I think part of my personal view from an investing standpoint was I'd rather just own my own, NFTs and investments versus trying to own a small percent of a larger portion. But when we get into more of the, really making an impact, making a splash, trying to spread Web3 to broader parts of the world, that has definitely caught my attention and is a driver that I think I can certainly get behind. So
yeah. I'd like to pick up on something there if I could, because this is something that's really, really exciting to me. Is that you mentioned the kind of the psychological thing probably about owning your own, right? And not necessarily owning a percentage. This is a super interesting just like topic to me overall. And of course, we're big fans of fractional.art at Lucky Trader, right? At a place to democratize, right? Like Rally Road, think of, alternative assets and all the other, at least in recent years, traditional investment vehicles that now allow you to fractionalize shares, right? So I think democratizing access to investment vehicles or to assets is like a core theme of Web3. But you're exactly right. There is still that psychological barrier. Like there's that meme about owning one Bitcoin, right? You can own a fraction of a Bitcoin type thing, right? So that's like something I would like to help my normie friends, right, get over is like, you could potentially still participate. You can't buy a punk maybe, but I'm actually working on a piece that's called, you can buy a punk, right? Like you can buy portions of a punk, and trying to get people to think about it through the lens of percentage gain, right? And not, it's not about making $100,000. It's about making 10% or 20%, right? And that's just like a psychology thing that I think is really, really interesting. I'm sorry to hop in on that, but something I'm actively thinking about and like, how do I get this through to potential people that are coming into NFTs who may be discouraged because the price is out of reach for them? How do I make sure that they know they can still participate even if they don't own the whole thing?
Yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan of fractional. We've highlighted them on this show several times, and it is a bit of a mindset. I equate it to buying equities, buying stocks in a company, right? It's buying shares and then looking at your percentage growth. It's an apt analogy, and I think there's just a lot of use cases. There's a lot of outlets for these that we just aren't even on our radar yet.
Yep. That's
and
exciting.
It is exciting. I'm super excited about it. I think this was a great kind of last topic for our interview today. Before we cut it off, Logan, any last thoughts, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
No, I really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. I love talking about it. Obviously, if you can't tell, hopefully, despite the lack of sleep, the espressos have brought through the energy to the folks in the audience as well. So I appreciate you bringing us on. Feel free to check out luckytrader.com. You can find me, around LH09 on Twitter, and I'm happy to engage and talk about it. I look forward to getting your feedback and hopefully implementing it on site and making it a useful spot for everyone.
Awesome. Well, we certainly felt your energy. We're big fans of .com. So we'll continue to show your content actively in our show and via our Twitter. And hopefully we can, continue our conversation on DAOs and on the market and other topics in the future. So
yeah,
certainly thanks to having you on here. All right, to our viewers, listeners, that's our show for today. We will be back on Monday to recap the weekend, back in our normal time slot, 11 a.m. Central. As always, till then, stay safe in those NFT streets. Goodbye. Logan, I hate to cut us short there. My son's home from